Okay, in this segment, we're going to discuss pharmacology basics. Obviously, if you're going to study pharmacogenomics, it's going to require understanding of the basics of pharmacology and the basics of genomics. So pharmacology is the study of drug response. Fortunately, it's pretty straightforward. I think we can get these ideas across pretty easily. Before we go into the details, why does humans have genetic systems for metabolizing drugs? Kind of doesn't make sense. We've only had drugs for a few hundred years. This species has been around for about 150,000 years, starting as a small group of Homo sapiens in Africa, and then over the last 150,000 years spreading throughout the world. So the reason we have drug response systems, in part, is because our ancestors, maybe they were taking some medications. They might have been grinding up some roots or trying out some bioactive ingredients that they just happened upon. But they were always eating. And in eating, you might get a bad mushroom. You might get the leaf or a berry of a poisonous plant. And it was a huge evolutionary advantage. A huge evolutionary advantage to have systems for detoxification. Therefore, as we were evolving, and this was even before we were humans, even as we were apes and yeast and way back 3 billion years ago to the beginning of life, it was certainly advantageous to have systems for recognizing foreign substances, or xenobiotics, and excreting them. And so our liver and our kidney have somewhat elaborate systems for transporting foreign substances out of the body, for recognizing foreign substances and chemically altering them to make them more easy to excrete. Well, those detoxification systems that we evolved for hundreds of thousands, if not more years, are also in play when we take a foreign substance on purpose, like a drug. And so a lot of pharmacology is understanding these innate human systems for processing small molecules, and we'll get into that. Now, before we go into more detail, I just want to point out that there are many types of drugs in terms of the types of molecules that we're talking about. So the most common drug type is small molecule drugs. And that's what we're often focusing on. These are small molecules, say 20 to 150 atoms. They have to get across membranes. They often look like small molecules that are natural, like the amino acids, lipids, the DNA and RNA bases, vitamins. Those are all small molecules, and many drugs mimic naturally occurring molecules. We also, however, have proteins increasingly. These are referred to as biologics. It's a funny word, but when you hear people talking about biologic drugs, they're talking about drugs that are delivered as proteins. Whereas most small molecules can be delivered orally, or perhaps intravenously, biologics can almost never be delivered orally because they're full proteins and the body would just digest them as if you just had a meal of a steak. So what happens for proteins is you either have to give it IV or subcutaneously or some other way bypass oral processing, which will lead to digestion and ruining your very expensive biologic. I'm not going to discuss it in any more detail, but there are also emerging RNA therapeutics where we're actually delivering RNA into patients. And there's various nano delivery systems where they are actually creating three-dimensional packaging for small molecules that then get put into the body. So nano packaging, nanotechnology, packaging. But for the most part, in this set of discussions that we're going to be having, I'm going to be focusing on small molecules.